The Beatles is a band that changed the music industry, culture, and the social fabric of the 1960s. The legendary musicians from Liverpool, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, didn't just record albums, they created waves that shook the world. Inspired by the spirit of the times, they left an indelible mark on history. Their music, personal lives, scandals, and the myths surrounding the band became part of their legend. The beginning of the journey. The Beatles began their career in Liverpool in 1957. At that time, John Lennon and Paul McCartney met, and their creative partnership became the foundation of the band. In 1960, George Harrison joined them, and a year later, Ringo Starr became a part of the group. The band was initially named The Quarrymen, but soon they became known as the Beatles, a name combining the words Beatles and beat, symbolizing both their musical style and their new sound. They started performing in the clubs of Hamburg, where they gained their first fans. Although their early career was modest, it was in these clubs that they developed their unique style and honed their stage performance skills. The rise and worldwide success. In 1962, the Beatles signed a contract with the Parlophone label, and their first single, Love Me Do, became a hit in the UK. But the real worldwide success came in 1964, when the band released their album, Please Please Me, and then stunned America with their debut appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show. Over time, the Beatles became an international sensation, and their musical experiments and unique sound began to shape musical trends. Every Beatles album became an event. Albums like Rubber Soul, Revolver, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and the White Album were not just musical recordings but true cultural phenomena. The band was a pioneer in the use of studio technologies, musical experimentation, and incorporating various styles like psychedelia, folk, and classical music. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, 1967, became not only a musical revolution, but also a reflection of the spirit of the times, full of change and a quest for freedom. It was more than just a musical piece. It was a concept album that captured the cultural revolution of the 1960s. Scandals and legends. The Beatles' lives were not only filled with music, but were also surrounded by many myths and scandals. One of the most famous controversies came from John Lennon's statement in 1966, "We're more popular than Jesus." This remark sparked outrage in the US and other countries, leading to public burnings of Beatles records and even threats against the band. Lennon later apologized, explaining that his words had been taken out of context and had no anti-Christian meaning. Another major scandal was the death of their manager, Brian Epstein, from a drug overdose in 1967. Epstein was not only the business manager, but also a close friend who helped organize their career. After his death, the Beatles faced financial difficulties and personal disagreements. Influence on culture and society. The Beatles weren't just about music. They became cultural icons of the 1960s. They defined style, lifestyle, and political attitudes of the time. Many of their songs, such as Imagine by John Lennon and Hey Jude by Paul McCartney, became anthems for peace and love. A cult-like following surrounded the band, and their influence on the youth of that era was immense. The album Revolver became not only a musical revolution, but also a reflection of the spiritual search and the quest to understand the world, which was also tied to the popularity of drugs among the youth of the time. The Beatles didn't shy away from talking about their experiments with psychedelic substances, and this became a part of their mythology. Conflicts and the band's breakup. However, not everything in the band was perfect. Over time, disagreements arose between the members. Creative clashes, personal ambitions, and mounting tensions led to the breakup of the Beatles in 1970. John Lennon and Paul McCartney started their solo careers, but their relationship remained complicated. Lennon became a symbol of protest and political activism, while McCartney found success as a commercial musician. Although they tried to reconcile, in 1980, Lennon was tragically murdered in New York, which became a real blow to the Beatles' fans and the music world as a whole. George Harrison and Ringo Starr continued their music careers, but never reached the same level of success they had with the Beatles. However, Harrison left his mark in music, especially with his album All Things Must Pass. Legacy. Despite the breakup, the Beatles' legacy never disappeared. Their music continued to inspire new generations. In the 1990s, when technology allowed for the restoration of recordings featuring Lennon, McCartney, Harrison, and Starr, the band released new songs such as Free as a Bird and Real Love, which became hits. In 2001, 21 years after Lennon's death, the Beatles were honored with the highest award, the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Today, the Beatles are not just a band, they are a cultural institution. They became symbols of an era and an inspiration for millions of people around the world. Their music continues to be relevant, and their influence on music, cinema, fashion, and social movements is hard to overestimate. Their creativity brought forth melodies that capture the soul and lyrics that touch on important aspects of life, love, and philosophy. The Beatles will forever remain in history as a band that made the impossible possible, revolutionized the music world, and created timeless music for generations to come.